First, effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen. Is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol during pregnancy, can be associated with a very increased risk of autism.
He can't even pronounce it. He didn't even take the time to learn how to pronounce it. This entire press conference was really hard to watch and was just 60 minutes of stream of consciousness with very little facts, and we have to discuss it. I sat through all of it, and what I heard was our president and his administration spreading a steady stream of inaccurate, misleading, and oversimplified information about acetaminophen and autism. That matters because when you throw out big claims without context, you're not just confusing parents, you're disrespecting the autism community. Let's break this down with facts, science, and compassion. It's a longer video, but it's important. And if you feel like it's important, please share it so more families get clarity instead of fear.
No, ideally, you don't take it at all. But if you can't tough it out, if it's a problem, you're going to end up doing it.
Hearing a man stand in front of another group of men say that about pregnancy, my God, I would love to see one of them pregnant and hear them repeat that line. Women don't just take Tylenol for fun. They take it for fever, which we know can harm a pregnancy if untreated, and for pain, when there truly aren't safer options for the fetus. And the largest study we have shows no increased risk of autism with Tylenol use, and they don't bring that up? Every major health organization is saying otherwise because, well, we know facts and we know balance. Taking it as needed for the shortest duration of time at the lowest dose possible has always been the truth. So telling pregnant people to just tough it out isn't medical advice. It's ignorance dressed up as policy.
Don't take Tylenol. Don't take it. If you just can't, it's fight like hell not to take it. There may be a point where you have to, and that you have to work out with yourself.
So let me translate. Tylenol, or acetaminophen, causes autism. And if you're weak and take it, you better just sit with the guilt. So which is it? Don't take it, but take it if you must and regret it? This is not science. This is shaming women. The only thing that needs to be worked out here is how grown men think they get to guilt pregnant women from a podium.
There's a rumor, and I don't know if it's so or not, that Cuba, they don't have Tylenol because they don't have the money for Tylenol, and they have virtually no autism, okay? Tell me about that one.
Pointing to Cuba and saying no Tylenol, no autism is just nonsense. Cuba has a state-run healthcare system that's under-resourced, with shortages of basic medications and very limited diagnostic infrastructure. That doesn't mean autism doesn't exist. It means a lot of kids don't get evaluated or labeled. And as someone practicing in South Florida, which has a large Latino population, including Cubanos, I can tell you firsthand, Cuban families absolutely have autistic children.
Just a few decades ago, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. So that's not a long time. And I've always heard, they say a few, but I think it's a lot less time than that. It used to be 1 in 20,000, then 1 in 10,000. And I would say that's probably 18 years ago. And now it's 1 in 31, but in some areas it's much worse than that, if you can believe it, 1 in 31. And I gave numbers yesterday. For boys, it's 1 in 12. I was told that's in California where they have for some reason, a more severe problem.
He just loves to act like he doesn't know what's going on in California. Here's the truth. In the 1980s, autism was underdiagnosed because of stigma, lack of awareness, and narrower criteria. The numbers looked smaller back then, not because autism suddenly exploded, but because fewer people were recognized. As for California, calling it a problem is misleading. California has some of the strongest screening programs in the country, and families often have better access to specialists and resources. That means more children get identified earlier, and more awareness and better diagnosis is the opposite of what was on display at this press conference.
The Amish, as an example, they have essentially no autism.
What is this obsession about the Amish? The claim that the Amish have no autism is false. Autism exists in every population worldwide. Reported rates look lower in the Amish because of limited access to medical services, cultural differences in labeling, and their smaller population size. So yes, they have autistic individuals, but they're just walking around without a label being their autistic selves. And if you don't seek care, you don't get a diagnosis. This myth is often recycled in anti-vaccine circles, but it has no basis in reality.
We want no mercury in the vaccine. We want no aluminum in the vaccine. The MMR, I think, should be taken separately. This is based on what I feel, the mumps, measles, and all the three should be taken separately. And it seems to be that when you mix them, there could be a problem.
When you have someone who doesn't know medicine or public health make a press conference about such information, it's going to be riddled with misinformation. And let's clear this up. There is no mercury in childhood vaccines. Thiomersal, the preservative people worried about, was removed from all routine childhood vaccines in the United States more than 20 years ago. And wow, surprise, autism diagnosis is still rising due to more awareness and better diagnostic criteria. As for aluminum, yes, tiny amounts are in some vaccines, but not the MMR. The amounts used are far less than what babies naturally get through breast milk or formula, and decades of data show it's safe. And the MMR cannot just be split apart. It used to be offered separately, but it was pulled because there wasn't enough demand, and splitting it didn't reduce any side effects. What it did do was increase the number of doctor visits and the risk that kids missed doses, leading to outbreaks of measles. So no, mixing them isn't the problem. The real problem is spreading fear that isn't backed by science.
Our research has revealed that folate deficiency in a child's brain can lead to autism. We have also identified an exciting therapy that may benefit large numbers of children who suffer from autism. Peer-reviewed literature has documented that up to 60% of folate-deficient children with ASD can have improved verbal communications if given leucovorin.
Yes, leucovorin, a form of folinic acid, may help a small subgroup of those with autism with cerebral folate deficiency based on small studies. But this does not and should not mean broad recommendation. To recommend it broadly, we'd need large, well-designed trials in a lot more autistic children. Right now, it's not a proven intervention, and it's going to cause more chaos and more harm.
Is approving prescription leucovorin for treatment of autistic children. Now, if you're following the script, there should be two questions that you have. Two questions that should come to your mind. The first is, how will patients and parents get access to the treatment? I'll tell you how. Over half of American children are covered by Medicaid and CHIP, government health insurance. Over half. Therefore, because they're covered in Medicaid and CHIP, upon this label change by Marty, state Medicaid programs in partnership with CMS will cover prescription leucovorin around the country. It's yours, but you have to go to a doctor to get a prescription because they know your child, they know you, and they know the medication.
Okay, really? I have two questions. First, how exactly is Medicaid covering this when your administration is busy gutting Medicaid? Second, who exactly is profiting? Because it sure looks like a conflict of interest when the same folk on the stage, Dr. Oz, has ties to companies selling folinic acid. Fun fact, Dr. Oz's iHerb already sells it as a supplement. So we're banning Tylenol, but handing out folinic acid while slashing access to the very insurance that would supposedly cover it?
And then hepatitis B is sexually transmitted. There's no reason to give a baby that's almost just born hepatitis B. So I would say wait till the baby is 12 years old.
This is the part where if we were at a dinner party, we'd have to take away his car keys. Just spewing out nonsense with no evidence to back it up. Hep B is not only sexually transmitted. It spreads through blood, medical and dental procedures, close household contact, and most critically from mother to baby at birth. That's why every major medical body recommends the vaccine starting at birth. Because if a newborn is infected, 90% end up with lifelong infection. Under 5, it's up to half. In adults, only about 5%. Delaying until 12 ignores that window and leaves the most vulnerable group, babies and children, unprotected. That's not tough policy talk. This is dangerous misinformation by someone who's just spewing his stream of consciousness.
Some 40 to 70% of mothers who have children with autism believe that their child was injured by a vaccine. We should be listening to these mothers instead of gaslighting and marginalize them.
Let me be clear. We should always listen to parents. The problem is not that we don't believe moms. It's that vaccines don't cause autism, and that is fact. What's confusing is that the earliest signs of autism often show up in the same window when kids are also getting vaccines. That's timing, not causation. We also know autism has strong genetic roots. You often see a parent, sibling, or relative on the spectrum too. And let's talk about gaslighting. Women are gaslit all the time when it comes to their pain, pregnancy, and health research because funding in women's health is lacking, and now we're throwing this at them. Suffer through your pain in pregnancy or your kid is going to get autism. All false. That's really gaslighting. Acknowledging that vaccines don't cause autism is not dismissing moms. It's making sure families get answers based on evidence.
Don't let them pump your baby up with the largest pile of stuff you've ever seen in your life going into the delicate little body of a baby. Even if it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you just break it up into, I would say 5, but let's say 4 visits to the doctor instead of 1.
This is classic anti-vax rhetoric dressed up as a concern. The truth? Vaccines are studied, and then we look at safety when we give it to our children. And decades of data show no harm in the recommended schedule. Spreading them out doesn't make it safer. It just leaves kids unprotected for longer and means more needle sticks, more appointments, and more chances to fall behind. We don't pump kids full of vaccines. We give carefully studied doses that protect against diseases that used to hospitalize or kill children.
Don't take Tylenol. There's no downside. Don't take it. You'll be uncomfortable. It won't be as easy maybe, but don't take it. If you're pregnant, don't take Tylenol. And don't give it to the baby after the baby is born.
Like seriously, he just kept repeating this towards the end of the conference. Take acetaminophen if needed for pain or fever. This has always been recommended.
I want it when I leave office. I don't want to have, it's going to be the kind of number that we're hearing where it's 1 in 32 or 1 in 10, because I've heard 1 in 10 also. And in California, it's really bad. I want it to be, let's get it back to maybe 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 20,000 or maybe none in 20,000.
I hate to break it to you, autism isn't disappearing because it's not caused by acetaminophen or vaccines. What will actually happen under this kind of thinking and this stigmatizing press conference is fewer diagnoses, more stigma, and families pushed back into the shadows like in the 1980s when kids were missed or mislabeled. More awareness and better screening mean we recognize more kids. It doesn't mean autism suddenly appeared. The prevalence didn't drop when mercury was removed from vaccines because mercury was never the cause. And it's not going to drop after this press conference and these recommendations either.
Because you're only seeing this in people who are under 50 years of age. If it were better recognition or diagnosis, you'd see it in 70-year-old men. I've never seen this happening in people my age. I've never seen a case of full-blown autism, and I mean profound autism. I want to be very careful. Headbanging, stimming, toe walking, nonverbal, non-toilet trained. I've never in my life seen a 70-year-old man who looks like that.
He said he doesn't see 70-year-olds with autism, only people under 50. That's not because autism suddenly appeared. It's because older autistic adults grew up in a time of extreme stigma, no awareness, and no services. Many were misdiagnosed, institutionalized, or never given the label. You don't see them because society made it impossible for them to be visible. Autism has always existed. What's changed is our willingness to recognize and support autistic people instead of hiding them. This press conference didn't move us forward on autism like it's claiming to do. It pushed us backward, erasing years of work by autistic advocates, parents, pediatricians, and educators. Mr. President, your team did not offer help. You spread fear, doubled down on misinformation, and ignored stronger evidence. This was a shameful portrayal of fear-mongering disguised as education. And autistic kids, families, and those who serve them will be the ones who suffer.